don't get me wrong, y'all. You know what I'm saying? I agree that LeBron James has played on some teams that, for long stretches of his career, did not have the best talent. Okay, I agree with that. And what he did this year, playing with essentially two different rosters and still going to the NBA Finals, is a remarkable accomplishment in itself. But, okay, this is what bothers me about this. People act like he's the only superstar in basketball history to do a lot with so little. Okay. Um, Allen Iverson. All right, this screenshot right here is of the 2000-2001 Philadelphia 76ers, who went to the NBA Finals where they would lose, as everybody knew they would, to the Shaq Kobe Lakers. Okay. Now, as we peruse this roster, do we see anybody who's a secondary all-star like a Kevin Love? The closest thing to that would be the Dikembe Mutombo, but Mutombo was a defensive player who could score around the basket, but he was nowhere near the effective scorer that Kevin Love is. Okay. Um, Mutombo also had this annoying habit of when he would get the basketball, he had to bring the ball down low to gather himself, despite being 7'2". And oftentimes, by the time the Kimmy would do that, the double team would come by, and oftentimes, the Kimbe would be in a position where he would miss the shot, or sometimes he would lose it, you know, and that was annoying to watch. But he was a great shot blocker, for a good 4 or 5 year stretch, maybe even more than that. He was the best shot blocker in the league, but and a great defensive player. But other than that, he was not a great scorer. I think the most points he ever averaged was 16 points a game, and that was when he was playing in Denver. Okay, when he was younger and playing with the Nuggets, who have a long history of being one of the top offensive teams in the NBA. Um, Also, unlike LeBron James, Allen Iverson, to the best of my knowledge, never in his tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers, he's never had an outside shooter like a Kyle Korver. Okay, uh, he's never had a guy who can shoot outside like even Kevin Love. All of these guys, if you look at this roster, a lot of these guys are good defensive players. All right, Vernon Maxwell was a volume shooter, but he was not by a percentage a great 3-point shooter. I think for his career he was like 32% or something like that. And he had many years when he was off, when he was only shooting in the high 20s. He was known more for his defense. If his 3-point shot was hitting, then that was just something added to his game. All right. Tyrone Hill, who I think is the ugliest NBA player of all time. That's just not something to be mean about, but I think everybody kind of believes that. Maybe I should have left that out there. That's kind of mean. But Tyrone Hill at this particular time was getting older, and he wasn't quite the same guy that he was when he was with the Golden State Warriors in the early 1990s. He was a good defensive player. All right. Tony Kukoc was getting older. I think Tony Kukoc at the time was starting to have back issues. All right. So he didn't really have a secondary guy on that team that could help him out offensively. And that's why I never really criticized Allen Iverson for shooting the ball as much as he did, because he really didn't have any help. He really didn't have any help offensively. All right. And also got pissed off at the perception that Allen Iverson was just this volume scorer who was selfish. Because if I'm not mistaken, Allen Iverson used to average 7, 8, maybe even 9 assists per game. Okay, he was that team's both shooting guard and point guard oftentimes. Okay, he did double duties. He was getting positions because he was such a deadly scorer. He knew that he would be double teamed at times, and he used to get guys in position to score. The best that they possibly could. Allen Iverson, in my opinion, actually really did make his teammates better. And I thought that this notion that he was this selfish fucking player pissed me the fuck off because I thought it was because of his personal image. He wasn't the most articulate guy. He didn't wear suits to his press conferences. You know what I'm saying? So he rubbed a lot of, middle America the wrong way. So they always gave him bad fucking press. You know what I'm saying? And looked at him a certain way. But Allen Iverson, to me, was a guy who truly had no help. Another guy that comes to mind is Moses Malone, who, if you look at his roster in 1980-81, okay, he played with nobody. It was a short roster, all right? Trying to think. Calvin Murphy was a teammate of his, but Calvin Murphy by that time was on the downside of his career. He was no longer starting, I don't think. Billy Pulse, I don't think he was starting anymore. Rudy Tom John was in his last year in the NBA. All right. If you look at that roster, it's not a lot of standout players. Okay. What was Moses Malone doing? Powering that team to the NBA Finals, averaging 28 points and 15 rebounds a game during the regular season. I don't know his playoff numbers, but they probably were even more impressive individually. So I understand where LeBron James fans are coming from. LeBron does a lot with so few, but he's not the only guy. Okay, he's not the only one. And LeBron James, to an extent, is at fault with some of this shit because it seems as though a lot of guys don't like playing with him. Okay? And he's the one that asked for the roster to be rehauled. He's the one that helped to initiate J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson to get these big-ass contracts. So it ties the Cleveland Cavaliers' hand about, when it comes to getting big-name players there. So LeBron James deserves some accountability there. And maybe we are a little bit hard on LeBron for not approaching some of these games in certain moments the way we want him to approach them. Yes, he's his facilitator at heart. That's what he genuinely is. He's not a pure-bred scorer like a Michael Jordan and a Kobe Bryant, okay? And I even with saying that, sometimes even people like me can get a little carried away with that because we tend to think that Kobe just always, went down, on his shield, so to speak, shooting the basketball. But people do forget the 2008 NBA Finals when the Lakers were playing against the Celtics. And Kobe was, for many stretches of this series, missing in action. Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Kobe only averaged 22 points a game in that series. And there were certain stretches where Kobe literally disappeared. So sometimes, yeah, we can get a little carried away with that Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant comparisons with LeBron. But this is my issue. If you know that LeBron James is purely a facilitator who just happens to be also a great scorer, but at heart, he's mostly a facilitator. That's what he's most comfortable in doing, having all these multiple skill sets and participating in more than just scoring, fine. But if you know that that's what he is at heart, then stop fucking comparing him to the guy who's considered the greatest player of all time and a pure scorer in Michael Jordan. Because if you keep saying he's better than Michael Jordan, okay, he's better than Michael Jordan, then in my mind and other people's minds, when Jordan excelled in these moments when the Bulls needed a bucket, when he excelled at times when he saw that, and he could sense that the opposing team was starting to get carried away as far as the scoring is concerned, when they're building up a big lead. Jordan was the one who scared his teammates into playing and focusing on the game of basketball and playing as a unit and being prepared and playing at their hardest possible levels when it comes to the game of basketball. LeBron James, to me, lacks a lot of leadership qualities. Okay, he lacks leadership qualities when it comes to, in my opinion, interacting with his teammates at times, especially during the games. He, I don't know if there's a right term to use, but James sometimes seems hesitant to take over a ball game. Um, there were many times when LeBron James had the basketball the other night and Stephen Curry was guarding him. And I'm thinking to myself, everyone always talking about how James has all these physical gifts. 6'8", 260, blah, 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 fucking blah. All right, you even had Jay Williams the other day saying, blasphemous, I mean, just ludicrously saying that James is faster than Michael Jordan, which is absolute garbage, okay? But anyway, you got all of these people saying this shit, and yet you're scared to take Stephen Curry to the hole. The so-called fastest guy with all these physical gifts, and you're hesitant to shoot the basketball. You can even shoot over Stephen Curry. You're 6'8". He's 6'3", maybe, in shoes, but you're scared. The way he approached the second half of that game, it just rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah, if you're a casual and you look 33 points, 10 rebounds, 11 assists, oh, he balled. He balled his ass off. But this is what I saw when I watched LeBron James the other night, man. I remember watching and I was looking at him pass in the first quarter. And I was thinking, okay, well, I think he's padding his assist numbers because we all know LeBron does that. And Westbrook does it too. I'm not going to sit there and act like Westbrook isn't wary of his numbers. But LeBron was padding his assist totals. All right. Then in the second quarter, maybe beginning the third, he was scoring, getting the bulk of his points. And then I saw LeBron James, who became passive. All right, he became very passive. He was deferring too much to his teammates. Even Jeff Van Gundy said something about that during the national broadcast, to the point where Van Gundy was questioning whether he was deferring to his teammates to the point where it was detrimental to the offense, which I agree with. And then I saw LeBron James, who was laying back on defense to the point where he was roaming under the basket and trying to pad his rebound totals because he loves to get defensive rebounds. That's what I saw. A guy who was trying to accomplish a triple-double. To once again say, we lost, but look at my numbers. You can't criticize me. I can see it. A lot of other people can see it. But many others don't. They just look at the numbers. They're not actually watching the game. They look at the numbers. You can score 30 points in a game, right? And you can have another guy on the opposite team who scored no points, but grabbed 15 rebounds and had 8 assists. And he had more of an impact on that game than the guy who scored 30 points. But if you just look at the box score, oh, such and such had 32 points. He was balling. Yeah, but you failed to see that he scored most of those points, 12 of them in garbage time. He shot 11 for 28, all right? And when the team needed his shots, he missed them. He scored most of those points during meaningless points in the game where his team was still down, while the other guy blocked 4 shots, probably caused what would have been 12 other points, to not be scored because just his intimidation alone caused him to miss the shot. Got 15 rebounds, all right, which gave his team extra possessions, and he helped to have his team win. But if you just look at the box score, you'll just say, hey, the guy who scored 32 points did more. So that's how I feel about LeBron James, man. He's a tremendous basketball player. I think he's the greatest small forward to play this game. But I think tonight, I think Cleveland's going to get swept. And I think LeBron James is playing his final game as a Cleveland Cavalier. But that's just how I think, man. Tell me what you guys think.